check me out.
So going to the Diddy case now.
Right.
All right. So with Diddy's situation, just looking at it from the outside and your legal expertise, but I'm still gonna ask a question with this. Does it seem strange that when we're talking about what actual trafficking is versus say an artist has females come out, they kicking it in the studio and that things of nature, they might go on a date or something, or they have fun, you might make sure she's straight, give her a couple of dollars or something like that. Does that seem conflicting to you versus the people who may be actually trafficked in those cases? Because a lot of artists are looking at it like, Lil Boosie had something to say about it.
Right.
But does that seem kind of conflicting to you? Because, that's a lot of people's livelihoods in the industry. That's how they move.
Right. So this is not legal advice. I'm trying.
Not legal advice, y'all.
But as a former criminal defense attorney at the Entertainment and Sports Lawyer, this is heartbreaking to see what I think was a horrible domestic violence situation played out in a criminal and federal court that's taking a lot of taxpayers' money. So I don't know what this prosecutor saw, and it's even unfortunate that if Cassie, and I'm using the word extort, because $20 million or whatever the number she got before trial, and in this case is still going criminal, it's a lot of things that I'm scratching my head as just like a layperson, like how does this happen? And just as a criminal defense attorney, so because statute of limitations might have passed on a domestic violence case, or the victim didn't want to cooperate and go to the police. I think they've taken a lot of, and we don't know what they have. Like, I'm not in the courtroom. There's no cameras allowed in federal court, so we're giving second, third, fifth hand. It's the great social media knowledge. So it's really hard for me not to comment when I'm as a criminal defense attorney, but and it just sway one way. But I feel like it's a lot of smoke, right? You know what happens in the industry, but again, what I feel like they're trying to say is sex trafficking. There could be different states sex trafficking. So I'm a Florida-based attorney, right? New York has different laws, and then they also have different federal laws, right? So they could file with a state charge with federal time, or they could just have different federal charges. So that's why I think this case, they were honing in on some of the money things, to trump up a RICO case or some of the arson. But my concern with even those, to make them federal and make it look way worse than it probably is in individual situations, and even in context of it being a horrible workplace environment for people, it doesn't sit right with what everything we have. So I'm curious to see how this jury will decide, and I hope they're not swayed by evidence that does not fit what he's being charged with. Right. And what I also see and find funny is a lot of these federal laws, it takes 2 or more people to conspire to do a RICO charge, 2 or more people to conspire to do an arson, and where is the other co-defendants in this case? And that's usually so common in federal cases, is there's 1 or 2 or more people that are indicted, and then one person rules on the other. It was a deal. The other person's testifying against the other. So the fact that Cassie was able to get a civil judgment, this is still in trial, right? And there don't appear to be any other co-conspirators that were charged or took a plea deal to cooperate. This is a very interesting case for entertainment for event. I'm curious to see what happens.
Because to be honest with you,
and I don't want to make light of anything. I'm a criminal domestic violence survivor, so it's horrible things would happen, but social media and people's lifestyle, there's a cost that comes to everything. And if people can send it to certain things, let them be their private business. And if a prosecutor had a hard nose on for whatever, there's a lot of time and things that have been exhausted by this case. And they're, like you first brought up, there are real victims of sex trafficking that are happening in bathrooms, truck stopping places,
different countries,
different countries, and hotels. So, the amount of money that they spent prosecuting this case, when they probably could have saved thousands or not tens of thousands of girls, makes me want to really look at our criminal justice system and our courts, and how even us as experts in law are being utilized, right? Where are we putting our resources?
And then not only that, because us as African Americans, Black Americans that may be in the entertainment industry, it's like, is this really about justice, or is this something that you know, is stereotypical about how they treat us in this country.
So this goes to my point on how I got into criminal defense is because a lot of my entertainers and athletes were what I feel were being over prosecuted or unjustly stopped and arrested. Like it even happened to my own brother just because he was 6-something as a middle schooler. So, you know, yes, if we even just look at the data alone, just look at the numbers. There are more white Americans here in America, but then there are black, browns, and Hispanics that are more prosecuted.
Right.
So just if we look at the Diddy case, like, you know, where are all the other perpetrators and sex traffickers, and where's their exposure, and where, you know, their liability for doing this, and why is there so much, you know, attention on Diddy? But again, you know, this is television, social media, you know, celebrities put themselves in these limelights, so when they do something bad, it gets exposed that much greater. But, you know,
I agree.
I'm hopeful that, you know, the scales of justice are blind, and the jurors that actually are the deciding factor will really look at the facts based on what the law is, and if there's not a fit, then, you know, hopefully he'll be acquitted or not guilty or whatever, you know, the courts decide.
Yeah, I don't know, like, that's why I haven't spoken on it too much, because it's just certain things, like you said, just I'm scratching my head about, you know what I mean? Right. And that's the biggest thing. You have charges that says enterprise, but there's only one person being charged. So I kind of find that a little strange. So that's why I was glad to able to kind of ask you that. I've
always had that argument because I've been involved in cases where there's been other killings, you know, and as a personal injury attorney, we look at like who's liable, who has the money, who has the insurance. So when I look at entertainment as a whole, when, you know, rappers are getting killed, I'm like, you know, these record labels are funding these advances in these lifestyle that is funding these killings of these kids.
Yeah.
You know, who's going to hold these record labels liable for the environments they're creating, right? And that's why I think a lot of their contracts, something you said in another video, is why record labels are like, you're not my employee and I'm not your employer, so you can't sue us for workplace harassment, or you can't sue me for a hostile work environment.
Exactly.
Right? But there needs to be some mechanism where they're teaching these kids better financial responsibility. Our music's not put in this, you know, kill, drill music, rap culture. You know, we've glorified criminals. Like,
true.
No disrespect to Big Meech, but you ain't make it. You went on the road. Like, that, you did not, like, you ain't win. Like, they got 10, 20 years of your life. You know, so why is we, as our community, why do we, or even in music, you know, why do we glorify, you know, things that harm us? And that's why we have to change, you know, our psychology of music, which, and our expectations as consumers, and that hopefully will drive the record labels in the industry to make better quality music. Like, we can spend millions on meditation music and heal us and make us calm and zen, but if we, you know, bumping out Chicago, you know, drill and kill music and all this, and then we get indicted off a rap lyric, come on. Like, there's no balance of freedom of speech versus what, you know, if we're going to follow the law, but also if we're going to hold ourselves accountable. And,
you know, I'm glad you brought that up, because
save this video, because if I ever go missing,
I got you. Don't even worry about it.
We're all part of the problem, so that's why as much as I'm talking stuff, pointing fingers at myself and holding myself accountable. Like, I've represented people that I might not agree with their music. You know what I'm saying? I've done things that have, you know, maybe not still in my moral, you know, what I stand for, but, you know, and trying to help other people's careers and businesses. So, you know, it's all on us to create change and, you know, better for our environments.
Right.
Check me out.